So you're thinking about buying a Glock. Now, there is no one best Glock, but certain Glocks are going to be better for certain things depending on what you need it for. So in this video, we're going to run through 6 of the most popular 9mm Glocks and talk about what they might be best for depending on your own use case. So that could be things like range or competition, home defense, concealed carry, shit hits the fan, zombie apocalypse, whatever. And then if I could only have one pistol, which Glock would it be and why? So we're going to go from smallest to largest, starting with the Glock 48 and going all the way to the 34. And there's obviously a couple Glocks that I purposely left off this list because I don't even think you should consider them at all. And I'm going to explain why I did that too. Now, as always in this channel, we try to keep filler to a minimum. So that means no headbanger music while you watch me shoot. And I'm not going to clear 6 guns on camera. You're going to have to trust me. Now, of course, I hate to be that guy, but before we start, please smash that like and subscribe button. It really helps the smaller channels out like us who are not paid by big manufacturers to shill their products and tell you everything's good when really a lot of times it sucks. And also, check the links in the description where you can get 10% off all rooftop Korean gear at rtksurplus.com and get 25 bucks off your first order of steaks from Crowd Cow, which I know is kind of random, but gun people are usually steak people and their ribeyes are on some next level shit. With that said, let's get to the review. The Glock 48. Short version, Glock nailed it with this gun. This is Glock's latest carry gun. They call it part of their Slimline series because the gun is single stacked and therefore slimmer. And what that means, if you're not familiar, is that unlike a usual Glock mag, which is staggered, this one is just one single stack, which allows it to be thinner. Now that also means it can hold less rounds, so that's the trade-off. According to Glock, its unloaded weight is almost 21 ounces and its loaded weight is 25 ounces, which is pretty light considering how much gun you have and how many rounds you have. So you do get a lot in a pretty small package. Now this gun conceals the same as the Glock 42 and Glock 43, but it has more rounds and is way more shootable. If you ever shot a Glock 19, this one kind of shoots just like that. Whereas the 42 and the 43 can be, trickier guns to shoot for a new shooter. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I know everyone's in the comments with the 42 and 43 telling me why I'm wrong and how they can shoot it just fine. But let's be real, some guns are just easier to shoot than others if someone doesn't know what they're doing. And this gun is easier than those two. The reason that is because you can get a full grip. You can get your whole pinky on here. You're not relying on the little extension that comes with the 43 and 42. You can really get a solid purchase on this gun, which helps control it under recoil a lot better. Now, I actually sold my 43 because of this gun, and I do not regret it at all. Now, one consideration you might have is if you already have a Glock 19 and you're thinking about getting a 48 and vice versa. The 48 can kind of make the 19 redundant for some people. And what I mean is, the 19 isn't all that much bigger than a 48. And if you look at their thickness in a holster, this becomes even more apparent. The footprint really isn't that much different when you have them shoved down your pants. The real benefit of the 48 comes in terms of weight. It's noticeably lighter to carry because it's obviously a thinner gun and it holds less rounds. It holds 10. And sometimes we don't realize it. Like ammo is what adds a lot of weight to a gun. And the 19 holds 15. So you have a heavier gun with more ammo versus a lighter gun with less ammo. So it's a lot lighter. So if you're someone who really doesn't like to carry like a heavier gun, not that the 19 is really heavy, but you want something super light, maybe you live somewhere where it's really hot, you go hiking, you're pretty active, this gun works really well for that kind of role. So if you love your 19 already and you're totally cool with carrying it, a 48 might actually not make that much sense. I know multiple people who carry a 19, bought a 48, and realized that they'd rather just carry their 19 because it's not that much different. If you're going to get a 48, go with the new MOS version. There's going to be some really cool optics and weapon lights coming out for that thing. And of course, in classic Glock fashion, they released this one first, knowing we would just buy both anyway. Now, a lot of times people bring up the shield arms mags for this gun, which if you don't know, allow the 48 to hold 15 rounds the same way a Glock 19 does. Now, I am currently not running those. I am not interested in that yet at this time. The reason is, I still see some inconsistency in terms of reliability, and there's all sorts of nuance there where it's like, okay, they work, but you got to run these certain springs, you got to change the mag catch, and for me, I would rather have 10 rounds OEM 100% reliable than kind of roll the dice on aftermarket stuff when it comes to an EDC. To me, it's not proven enough yet to warrant 5 extra rounds. I mean, if I really want 15 rounds, then I should just carry a 19 because then they basically almost weigh the same. I carry this gun in a JM Custom Kydex wing claw with soft loops, and I also use a mod wing claw, except I remove the lip. So a lot of times you'll see on these claws, they come with a lip, and what that does is it helps torque the grip into your body. However, for me, I found that that adds a considerable amount of belt line bulge and almost can kind of like make me look like I'm pregnant. And so what I found is by removing this lip here, I still get the belt pushing up against this flat piece, which torques the grip in, but it allows the gun to have a much flatter profile. Now, one other thing to note that might be obvious for some of you, but not newer shooters, is that the smaller the gun is, the more challenging they are to shoot. While this is a pretty shootable small gun, in my opinion, it's still going to be snappier than these full-size double-stack Glocks, right? That's true for any brand of gun. Smaller it is, the more challenging it can be to shoot. And so that's why usually if you're a new shooter, you don't want to go too small. I don't think this gun falls into the too small category. I think it's kind of just right. And if we're talking purely wanting a Glock for concealed carry, this one wins, hands down. And really quick, if you skipped the beginning like I always do, please go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. It really helps out with the algorithm. And go ahead and check the links in the description for some really cool deals. Next up, we have the Glock 26, which as you can tell is not shown here. And that's because I don't own one and I don't want one. The Glock 26 has kind of lost a lot of its relevance. And what I mean by that is, when it first came out, it was a long time ago. There was no Glock 48. There was no Glock 43. It was just the more concealable option compared to a 19. And this made sense because there wasn't another option, right, for a more concealable Glock. And it's basically just got a shorter grip than a 19, right? So the grip is usually what prints when we carry, and so therefore it hides a little better. However, I think the shorter grip kind of makes this gun feel like I'm holding a stick of butter, right? It's challenging to control under recoil compared to the other ones. It's awkward, right? Because it's double stacked, but it's that short. I just don't like shooting this gun. I've never liked it. And, people will say, oh, but you can get a pinky extension for it and make it more shootable. And okay, that's true, you can. But then at that point, you've basically just created a shittier Glock 19. So you might as well just get a 19 if that's what you're going to do. Which brings us to the most popular Glock of all, the Glock 19. This is Glock's compact pistol. It has an unloaded weight of about 25 ounces and a loaded weight of 31 ounces, all according to Glock. Forgive me on this one, it's still got stock Glock sights. I just picked this one up and I haven't finished setting it up yet. Still waiting on some parts. So the Glock 19 is the best all-around Glock. And what I mean by that is it's not the best at one specific thing, so concealed carry, range, home defense, whatever, but it's the best compromise of all things. Like, it's truly a service pistol that you kind of, they shrunk down and is actually concealable. So if I could only have one Glock and not have multiple options, if I only could have one, it would be this, because again, it's not the best at everything, but it's the best mix of all things. And as you can see up against the 48, it's the same dimensions in terms of slide length and grip length. It's just a little bit thicker, right? Because it holds 15 instead of 10. Next up, we have the Glock 19X, often referred to as the Peanut Butter Glock or PBG. This is essentially a spin-off of Glock's entry into the Army's big new pistol contract that they were doing a while ago. I don't have all the exact history on that. I think the one they submitted for their contract had a safety because that was part of the requirements. I don't know exactly. There's other videos from gun history people that would probably be able to fill you in on that. I don't think it's that interesting, but that's where this came from. And it's essentially a 19 length slide on a 17 length frame. It has an unloaded weight of 25 ounces according to Glock, so same as a 19, and a loaded weight of 31 ounces according to Glock, which actually doesn't make a ton of sense because it holds 2 more rounds. So it should weigh a little bit more than a 19, but Glock probably just copied and pasted the 19 stats and called it good. So when these first came out, Glock was calling it the crossover, and there was like a lot of uproar. Like, a lot of people thought this was stupid, and so did I, right? Because one thing you see a lot of is people creating what's called Glock 19Ls, which is a 19 length grip and a 17 length slide, meaning more slide up top but less grip, so it's easier to conceal. And that's what people said they wanted. And so when Glock released the opposite, the gun internet got very upset. And I was one of those people who thought this was really dumb. I can confidently say, after shooting the crossover guns, mostly the 45, and we'll get to that, I'm a believer in this setup. It's actually pretty similar in design to not Colt, but just commander size 1911s in terms of slide length and grip. So if that's kind of your thing, then this might make sense. And hopefully it's not actually officer 1911s. I'm not a 1911 guy. It's similar to the smaller 1911. And this thing absolutely shoots flatter than the 19 and the 17. The recoil impulse is just better and softer, and it's much faster to be on target. And I think that's because of physics. And what I mean by that is, up top when the gun fires, the slide, goes back and forth and it oscillates. And what's really controlling that is our grip, right? Like what's down here, the force we apply lower is what prevents the gun from totally flipping out of our hands, right? And so because there's more grip and there's more surface area for us to really lock this thing down, I do believe it, and there's less mass up top, I really do believe that this thing has a noticeably lighter recoil impulse when you shoot it next to like a 17, which has more slide up top. One caveat to that is, like, I'm a pistol nerd. I shoot USPSA. If you're not like that deep into this, you might actually not notice a difference at all, and it might just be splitting hairs. Like, this is really for people who are like chasing seconds and inches on their splits and things like that. If you already have a 17, you're happy with it, like, I'm not convinced that upgrading to this like actually makes any sense. Now you do have the extra grip length to consider when you're comparing it to a 19. Now when you compare it to a 19, there is noticeably more grip to conceal, right? And when we carry, the grip is usually what prints, it's not the slide. So that is a consideration for you. Everyone can conceal guns differently based on build, how you dress, what kind of belt you wear, what kind of holster you use. So I can't tell you that you will definitely be able to conceal a 19X the same way you do a 19. For me, this one prints a little bit more, although probably not noticeable to someone who doesn't know what they're looking for, but it's just something to kind of consider. It does come with factory 3-dot night sights, which is pretty cool, way better than the normal Glock plastic sights they come with. And it also comes with these cool 19-round stendos, which a lot of people like. I thought that's kind of like a cool thing that they include that with the gun, a little different than the normal 17-rounders that these double-stack Glocks come with. So why don't I like this gun? My main issue with this gun that really prevents it from being anything I ever recommend to someone is this stupid little lip that they had to put under the magazine. And I'm going to show you exactly why. So here we have a Gen 4 mag, okay? The one it comes with. No problem. Now here we have a Gen 5 mag. You can tell because the orange follower. Look at that. The Gen 5 mag lips do not work in this magwell as it comes from the factory. Like, they're shaped a little different, and it's just, positioned in such a way where you either have to Dremel this off or swap your mag base pads in order to run Gen 5 mags. Now, if you're just a casual and you're going to buy one gun, maybe that's not a big issue to you. But if you're someone who owns a lot of pistols, if you're a competitor who owns a ton of Glock mags like I do, the ability to use any mags in any of these guns is like kind of a huge plus. I mean, obviously, except for, the 48, which can only run 48 mags. I can use Glock 17 mags in any of these guns, and that's huge to me. And of course, you can just Dremel it off, like whatever, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a stupid design move on the part of Glock. I don't understand why they did that. And that alone is reason for me to not recommend this and actually suggest the Glock 45. So the Glock 45 is really what the G19X should have been. Naming convention is of course a little confusing. It's a 9mm, it's called the Glock 45 because Glock's names are in the order of their patents. So if you're new to this and that's confusing, that's where the naming convention comes from. So this is probably my favorite Glock of them all. Its unloaded weight is 25 ounces according to Glock, and loaded weight is 31 ounces according to Glock. So it is still a crossover, just like the 19X. It shoots flat as hell. Now, why is it better besides the fact that it's all black? For one, we can look at the very generous magwell. If you see it compared to the 19X, that magwell is freaking huge, okay? So not only do you, are you able to run any generation of Glock mags in there, whether it's 4 or 5 doesn't matter, but it's simply easier to slam in fast reloads when you have a bigger magwell, right? Like, a lot of guys actually put aftermarket magwells on these G45s. I don't think it even needs one. I mean, it's pretty generous. You can even see from the backside how it kind of flares out and gives you a lot of extra space. Another reason I like this gun is because of the front serration. If you're someone who shoots with an optic, which obviously on this gun I don't have, but on my gaming gun I do, you probably cock your guns from the front a lot, right? And having these front serrations is actually really convenient when you do that. It's a little harder to do when you don't have them, and so that's why you see so many people sending them out for these Gucci builds and having front serrations added. So I think the addition of that is pretty clutch. Now, if I had to pick a gun for like zombie apocalypse, shit hits the fan, it's probably going to be this gun. It works with all G17 mags. It shoots flat as hell, and it's just been an absolute workhorse for me. I mean, all these Glocks are super reliable, so it's kind of hard to compare them in that way. But I've like kind of put this one through quite a bit since I've had it, you know, classes, you know, daily carry, whatever. And this thing is just an absolute tank. You also do get a little bit faster of a draw speed out of a holster with these G19 length guns because there's simply less gun to clear. So that's another consideration. But again, seconds and inches probably doesn't matter. Now, I love the G45, and I see really no reason to get a G19X because this exists. I only have this 19X because I picked it up in a really good trade. I wouldn't have bought this if it wasn't the case. The Glock 17, this is kind of a classic duty gun for cops, and it's essentially a larger version of the 19. It came before the 19, you know, hence the patent order. 17 comes before 19. It has an unloaded weight of 22 ounces according to Glock, and a loaded weight of 32 ounces according to Glock. So here's my main points on this gun. These are solid and can typically be had for cheaper than nowadays, even like a 19, G45, 19X. Although in the current, you know, gun buying climate, nothing's cheap. But during the Trump slump period, you could get police trade in 17s for like $400, and they would even come with night sights. So what I would kind of say is, while I don't think it's better than the G45, I think if you can find this for noticeably cheaper than a G45 and you're budget constrained, you're still going to be totally happy with this gun. It's an amazing gun, super soft shooting, rock solid. You can beat the shit out of them, and it's just an all-around solid, proven pistol. Now, of course, if you carry in the appendix position, this extra grip length compared to a 19 or the 48 is something to consider. Same with strong side, right? If you carry at 4 o'clock, this might print even more than it does on somebody carrying appendix. So that's something to consider, right? Like it's going to be a little bit harder to conceal. Now, one thing I did do was take off the weapon lights and shoot the 17 and the 45 back to back just to see if the recoil was different. And it really is. There is a noticeably better recoil impulse on the G45 compared to 17. It's not to say the 17 is unmanageable. It's totally manageable, but there is a very slight, subtle difference. Now, one consideration is that if you're an appendix carrier and you're maybe between the Glock 17 and the 19, a lot of times people are going to recommend that regardless of which one you get, you carry it in a 17 length holster. And that's because the extra length on the holster will actually balance the gun out better when you're carrying it and prevent belt rollout. And as you can see, there isn't that much difference, so it doesn't add a ton to the holster length, but that subtle difference is enough to kind of keep things stable. So one consideration that you might have is if I'm going to carry a 17 length holster, maybe I just want to fill it up with extra gun. So the only thing to consider is the extra grip length and concealment. Just something to factor in. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's a very personal thing, appendix carry. But it's just something you might want to think about. I think these are awesome home defense guns. I put, you know, weapon light on mine. I think they kind of work perfect for that. The Glock 34, the Big Daddy Glock. It's obviously longer slide than all of them, but has a 17 length frame. Here it is compared to a Glock 17 in terms of slide length, and here it is compared to a 19 in terms of slide length. So this is the heaviest of these Glocks. Its unloaded weight is 26 ounces, and its loaded weight is 33 ounces, according to Glock. And of course, if you add a weapon light, optic, I even have a brass or metal grip plug in here, you can really weigh the gun down a lot. This is a competition gun for me. This is for USPSA. That's why you do not see co-witnessed sights here. Like I wouldn't carry without co-witnessed sights, but for competition, I'm okay with it. I just like the kind of wide open glass window. And this thing eats recoil, right? It's a heavier gun, and that's why it's good. I do think this can be awesome for home defense, especially if you have someone in your house who might need to protect themselves with a firearm, but isn't that great with a handgun. This is going to be easier to shoot for a new shooter than literally any of these guns, right? It's just a big gun, and big guns shoot flatter and are easier to control under recoil because there's more weight. Now, what about the Glock 42 and Glock 43? To me, these are now obsolete because of the Glock 48 and, of course, 43X. They conceal the same as these do, but they hold less rounds and are significantly less shootable. I wouldn't even be surprised if Glock discontinued these one day. One caveat, they can work well as ankle guns if you're like a cop who needs like a backup gun, or even pocket guns, although I do think because of the squared shape of Glocks, there's probably better options for pocket carry. It can make the draw kind of awkward. So the award for Best Concealed Carry Glock goes to the Glock 48. The best all-around Glock is the Glock 19. And if I could only have one Glock pistol, this would be it. Best shit hits the fan zombie apocalypse Glock, my favorite Glock, the Glock 45. The best gaming pistol, Glock 34, hands down. And the best home defense pistol, Glock 34, hands down. Now, I'm not ignoring the 17. It just doesn't beat any of those guns in any specific categories, but it's still a rock solid pistol that I think you'd be totally happy with, especially if you could get it for noticeably cheaper than the other ones. So again, if you stayed all the way through, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below and I will respond as soon as I can.